Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of Midnight Poppyland on the Story Tinker. And today we are super excited to have half of the members of the Smut sisters with us. We have BegoniaRex and CP CopyPastel. So will you ladies say hi?
Hello. I've been on the podcast before, obviously, so it's fun to be back, and I am super excited to talk about this episode.
And I'm new, but lurk in the shadows of the internet all over the place, so people mostly know who I am. Hi. Yes. It's really great to join you, though, and actually meet you in person, Mindy. So this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I want to take a moment to shout out the Smut sisters. They stream every week, and do you want to share the details here?
Oh, the details of the thing that became Smut Sisters. Yeah, we stream. Which we were trying for every week for a long time. We've kind of gone into a bi-weekly format, but we announce it on our Instagram when we are and are not going to be streaming. We're on Twitch at twitch.tv/Smut Sisters, and usually at 6:30 PST on Saturday nights. And it's complete unbridled chaos. So I really look forward to seeing how Mindy actually keeps us on track and makes us behave ourselves, because we have never been able to stay on topic very long, but we try. We
only have half of you, so I think it should be easier than if it was 4 of you.
There we go. Yeah, it's only 50% of the chaos.
Yeah, so I'm going to put some links like in the comments or in the notes of the episode, but I also want to say that each of you are very creative in your own right, and you all have either fanfic or fan art, so you guys have to check out the Instagrams, check out the AO3 accounts, check out the stories. Right now they're in the middle of doing a very, very cool concept of a collaborative like round robin story, and it is fantastic and very cool, so check it out. I'll be posting links to everything, and yeah, so excited that you're on. All right, so let's get into this episode. So we start out, we have Tora. It's just standing there while Puppy is trying to fill up her scooter with gas. And she's like, oh, it's stuck, right, blah, blah, blah. And then she asks him, she's like, I'm just curious though, how'd you find me here? I only sent you a message that I was leaving town and my reception got cut off and I had to turn my phone off. So he's like, your friend Erdine told me, blank. And doesn't respond more. Staring off into space sounds like a lot of very typical, stereotypical male thing. I don't know if I agree with that, but I have to, that's the stereotype. And Papa's like, oh, he really doesn't like elaborating, huh? I guess given his role in the mafia, he's had to keep his answers as simple as he can to avoid leaking vital information. Probably second nature in him by now, even if he is quite introverted. And I know, it's funny because it reminds me of his interactions with Vincent are very, very curt. And in that case, it's not necessarily like leaking vital information, but it's more like to protect himself. And I guess it is kind of like leaking vital information, because if you give personal information about yourself to someone who is malevolent, they will use it against you. But, we will see him very shortly why he's not really interested in elaborating. Not that he thinks Poppy is malevolent, but some other reason. But what I really like about at least Poppy's thought process is that she's not getting upset and being like, okay, why isn't he talking anymore to me? Why isn't he saying, what is he withholding information? She's very understanding and she's putting herself in his shoes.
No, definitely. I like that she's, that's one thing I think that everybody really finds appealing about these characters, is that they don't judge each other, really. Like, there is obviously some surface judgment, because that's how humans are. Humans have to protect themselves in order to survive in this world. And so you have to kind of look at people and try and make some assumptions and some judgments to figure out who they are. But I think they both usually step back and give a chance to like look a little bit deeper and admit fault and admit when, things are kind of out of control. I like that she, well, I don't want to jump ahead. There's a thing coming, I won't jump ahead, but that she isn't judging him. And you can see that he clearly is trying to make some careful choices in his head. So yeah, he's staring, which may also just be a little bit because he's staring, but
no doubt.
Yeah. I like that we open with his eyes, just like very intently, like, yeah, we know where you're looking, Tora.
Well, he's missed her and he's been driving around trying to find her for an entire day. So yeah, a bit of relief there and just taking it in. So
yeah, it's like the beginning is from his perspective. He's towering above her, so you see him looking down at her. Yeah, he likes her.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And then she, she thinks to herself, but maybe, and she does push the question a little more. And she says, and she's anxious about it, you see, because she stutters. And she says, how did you find me here at this exact location, though? And she thinks back to when she first saw him, during her encounter with Julri, and she thinks, it's like Tora, and we see him coming in, and we see Poppy's face, and the poor girl, she has like tears in her eyes from this horrible things that Julri said, and she's just completely shocked to see him. Oh, it's just so sad to see her with those tears in her eyes. Stupid Julri.
Well, if she's anything like me, that's also just rage crying, because that's. Yeah. I have to admit, I really was kind of hoping that she was going to be the one to bitch slap him, but I'm fine with what actually happened, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit of Poppy hulking out and just going for it, taking him down. That would have been satisfying to see, if perhaps not the most realistic scenario here, right. But I think if she's anything like me in that case, that's not tears of sadness. That's tears of, I'm going to beat your ass, and it's coming out of my eyes right now. That's how I tend to react.
That's cool. And she thinks to herself, I just want to know a little bit more about his life. And she has a little bit of an anxious look on her face. And at first glance, you would wonder why. But then Lily does something which I think is fantastic. She really gives you an understanding of why Poppy reacts the way she does. And she's been doing this continually throughout the story, where Poppy has certain hesitancies, and which, on the outset, if we didn't know about her history, we would say, okay, she's just, hesitant. She takes things slow. But now when we get glimpses into her past, we really understand the fullness of her hesitancy and the amount of work it'll take to overcome that. And we get a flashback to Julri, and asking her, we have Poppy turned away from him, right? So clear body language. He looks like he's kind of yelling at her with a hurt look on his face, because who's the victim in this situation? It's Julri. And Poppy has this paper full of Poppy's schedule, and he's like, why do we need to exchange college schedules? Why do you keep probing into how I spend my time? How can we have a relationship if you don't trust me?
And then we see that he was like, oh, why were you talking to that guy? Like, he just turned around and, he didn't want to give any information to her, but then he wanted to control her relationships and who she was interacting with. But turning it back on her, she was asking very simple things of him, like, why wouldn't you want to know your boyfriend's class schedule? If you want to know what he's doing so you can hang out together. But he turned that back on her of don't ask me any questions.
Jerk.
Yeah.
Oh, so aggravating. Anyway, so Poppy has some kind of trauma, basically, for being too inquisitive, and she would be triggered and thinking, I'm being pushy, I'm being annoying, I'm being needy, and this is all the stuff that Julri has told her that she is if she dares to ask him any questions. So she's hesitating, but she's smart enough and self-aware enough to recognize where it comes from, because she shakes her head and she's like, get out of my head, which is I think it's a classic phrase, awareness is the first step to solving the problem. And yeah, obviously it's difficult to change, but at least knowing the reasoning and why and what the problem is, that is crucial to taking the next step. So go Poppy.
Well, and I like how Tora is kind of he's the next panel we see him, he's watching her, he's watching her reactions. We know that he reads body language really well. So I think he's kind of seeing that she wants to ask him more, but she's also hesitant, and he obviously knows about her ex. And so the fact that he now offers something without her asking, I think he's kind of seeing he has to keep so much close to the chest with her to keep her safe, but also realizing I need to I can see she's she wants to ask more, she's afraid, she's struggling, but I can at least extend a little bit more.
That's one thing that he said in an earlier chapter to her when they were at his apartment, and he asked, like, who did this to you, when she was clearly struggling with issues and she was worrying about, you know, talking to him and expressing her feelings and expressing that she was angry and that she has a right to be angry. And that was one thing that was really nice to see, was that he had that acceptance that he, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely agree with your partner when they are angry with you, but it is part of a partnership to give them the freedom to express how they are feeling, and how they are feeling, whether you 100% agree with it, is still valid because it is their feelings. And I like that he gives her that emotional like kind of safety to express how she's feeling. And so you can see, yeah, when he's looking at her there in that situation, he's obviously recognizing that she's spiraling. She's doing the same thing that she tends to. He's not necessarily gonna every time be like, what's going on inside the hamster cage, but he's still you know, aware that she's sorting some things out for herself. So it's kind of nice that he's also giving her a little bit of that space.
He's like the foil to Julri.
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bex, go ahead.
I don't know. I think over and over again, we see him, even though he's not privy to her thoughts, he obviously reads her really well. And so, like, she'll be thinking about some way that Julri acted towards her, treated her. And sometimes she's shared that with Tora, but she hasn't really shared the full extent yet. But I think he's picking up on that. And so, like, you know, the fact that we see Julri pushing back against her asking any information, and then Tora here responds, but then realizes that she needs more and just offers something.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what he does. He says, remember the first day we met? And Poppy's like, He says, well, earlier tonight, I was driving around and got to the place where you crashed your scooter. And we see the scene switching to him looking studly, just FYI.
Tora.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how. It's just impossible. No matter what she puts him in, he just gets hotter and hotter. It's just insane. Anywho. By the way, you know, when my husband thinks of Tora's looks, he's like, he's such a girly girl. I'm like, excuse me. I'm like, first of all, what's wrong with that? Second of all, I'm like, do you have eyes?
Girly girl, because he has long hair?
I don't know. Because he's beautiful? I don't know. Maybe only women can be beautiful in his eyes? I have no idea.
But I've been saying to people, like, with this little mini arc of, like, Professor Tora, like, the glasses and, like, the blazer, like, when I met my husband for the first time, he was wearing a blazer almost that exact same color, and he had, like, elbow patches on it, and I remember even being like, oh, I like your blazer, like, that looks really cute. And in my mind I was like, he looks academic. I was like, caught my attention right away.
It's so cute.
Well, you guys know my opinions on glasses. I almost died when
I know, right?
Your glasses are very cool. I wanted to comment on them. They're like Google glasses, so they have like all the rainbow on them. Right?
Well, for people who don't know, CP was the first fan to give us fan art of Tora wearing glasses.
I wrote an entire goddamn fanfic about it. Yeah, I have a weird glasses kink.
So, like, in CP's first fic, Staggering Forward, like, there's a whole scene where, like, Tora and Poppy are, like, reading together, and Tora pulls out his reading glasses, and Poppy's just like, what? No, I cannot handle this.
And I married a man with 20/20 vision. Like, answer me how that happened.
That's so funny. Wait, does he put on thick glasses for you?
No, he's a programmer though, but he does wear some Gundar glasses, which are yellow tinted programming glasses. Yeah. That's all I get. That's all I get. But he said that last time he went to the optometrist, they did say that he's probably going to need some things. I'm like, I get to pick them.
Like, you're the only one who's wishing for like his senses to go away.
I told Jax Stargazer, we were chatting on Instagram, I said, if it turns out like that I said, I want these glasses to be real. I want him to have a legitimate eye problem. And if he doesn't, I want to go and manifest myself into the comic and poke him in the eye. That's what's going to happen. Gosh. I have a problem, I know.
Well, no, I have an obsession with long blonde hair, and I've been begging my poor husband, like does not want long blonde hair, and I've been begging. So yeah, I know. We all have our things.
What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the comic.
Yes, right. So, Tora, he says, then I went out to take a look and saw that your scooter was gone. I removed all the blood and evidence that day. And this is what he's thinking, you know, to himself, that he removed all the blood and evidence that day. So I doubt anyone's going to pick up a lead from here. But God damn it, I can't believe I forgot all about the effing scooter. No tire marks. It must have been gone weeks ago, right? So that's his, you know, deducted or induction skills. I never remember which one's which. But I think deduction. But who the hell took it? Bobby, or did someone else come by? She was yelling about something that day. What did she say? And we remember Poppy, you know, we have a scene of her hugging her scooter. She's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take it out on you. I'll call for a tow truck to get you as soon as I can. So he remembers, like, oh, that's it. And he tells her now, we're back to the present. Then I remembered you said something about getting a tow truck. So I looked up tow services in Moonbright and found Darlene's garage. And once again, we're super excited about Darlene's garage. And I came to see if she had an address. And we have this little author's note, half truth accomplished.
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty scary if you tell someone, listen, I got this database, kind of has like all this private information on you, and I can like totally invade your privacy, even if it's incorrect information in the end, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can imagine him. I think it's fair for him. He's not lying. Just that would be a little much to throw at her all at once. So I think that's fair to keep that back.
Yeah, and he's like this. She's like, oh, right. None of you guys have my Moonbite address. Okay, which is a very ironic statement, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, gosh, you figured it all out just like that? That's pretty impressive. Which is sweet. Poppy's always into compliments, you know. I mean, this is like a perennial theme in the story, but like Tora doesn't get compliments. I mean, he gets compliments from Vincent, I guess, but it's like the most poisoned compliments ever.
Yeah.
So
The most backhanded way to say something.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if honestly that has a little bit to do with his inability to take compliments, because compliments from Vincent were always things that Tora did not like about himself. So if Vincent is complimenting him on something, it's usually he's complimenting something that Tora wish didn't exist. Therefore, when you receive a compliment of something that you maybe actually do take pride in, it might be hard to accept it or at least separate it from how you've been living your life your entire existence. So I think that is interesting.
Yeah. I also think if you're not used to getting compliments in general, it's hard to take it. Like my husband's a Dutch, and I think they're just, we grew up in a different culture in that sense. My mom was always giving us compliments and his family just didn't. And it wasn't meant to be not loving, it was just not done. And I think like whenever I give him a compliment, he kind of like rolls his eyes. so I think it's also like if you're not used to it. But Tora does like, he has this little uncomfortable thing. He shoves his glasses up and he's this little sweat mark. It is so cute. He doesn't know what to do with himself. And I know a lot of people were excited about the glasses shove because I don't know. When other people do it, who knows? When he does it, anything he does, it's sexy. So
what I love how she's like, that's pretty impressive. So like one is like, he's like, she complimented me, but also like, he didn't quite figure out all that exactly that way. So like, I think maybe he's also kind of starting like, I hope she doesn't like probe more than that.
He's a little sus at the moment, just a little bit.
Yep.
Because he even says like, that's it. That's all she wanted to ask.
Yeah. No, I think he was preparing for a bit more of a barrage of questions there. One thing that's kind of interesting, I just realized, is that we're talking about how like he doesn't take compliments well when it's about things like that he's done, but he really wants her to compliment on how he looks. Like he really cares. He was literally, he's like, I need more compliments. I need you to, hi, I look really good today. I'm going to need you to compliment me a little bit more, please. Could you comment?
I liked how he was like, how do I look? And she's like, oh, come on, you know you look good.
Right. That's the one thing that like he really gets a lot of affirmation from like everyone on the street.
That's probably the place where he has the most confidence. So,
but like he wants to know Poppy thinks he looks good. He doesn't care what other people think. Because like even in the club one, like last season when he had his like leather jacket on, and he's like posing for her. As soon as they started talking, he took it off. Because it had accomplished its goal. But like, I just love how he's like, he always wants like, do you think I look good? Do you think I look cute?
Tell me I'm pretty.
Tell me I'm pretty.
Sweet.
But it's
definitely.
funny though, like he like you know, so that's something where nobody else, he doesn't want everybody else looking at him. That makes him uncomfortable. He wants her to look at him. But then when she's actually complimenting things that, you know, are good about him, but maybe he doesn't perceive them as good qualities, then he's starting to get even more self-conscious. And I wonder if that's a little bit of like afraid that once she gets to know him a little bit more and starts to see more of his attributes, she might lose interest or discover something that she doesn't like about, or that she doesn't like about him, because those things or those situations where he has received praise in the past are usually tied to terrible things that he knows Poppy wouldn't really like. So I really like his like kind of deductive reasoning and how smart he is, and he's got those skills. I'm really interested to know like how that got trained into him and how that came to be, but I don't know if he necessarily values that in the way that other people would, because of how it's tied and how he maybe came to have that skill set.
Yeah, that's really smart. And you know, she's like, oh crap, that's too much. And while Tora's thinking, that's it, that's all she wanted to ask, what she said. And she thinks to himself, she's smart as hell. And if she went onto something, she could just be hiding it, which is so true, because sometimes we, as the readers, don't even know what's going on in Poppy's head, and she fools us. So who knows? She keeps
and
things to herself.
And the fact that he like sees that too, like there's a lot of people who don't catch on how smart Poppy is, because like Erdine even said like way back in the last season, like, oh, you always do this play along thing. And like I think Erdine and Jacob forget. Maybe Jacob doesn't even know, but like I think Erdine just kind of forgot that Poppy will act kind of sweet and like that she doesn't pick up on things, but she files all of that away. And then like Tora obviously sees that and doesn't like discount it or like forget about it, even if she's not like showing that side of herself overtly. But like the fact that he's like, okay, if she caught on to something, she might just not say anything.
Yeah, I mean, and his safety has always relied upon being a good reader of people, so it's not surprising that he can infer from beyond the surface. And
we've said this before, they're a lot more alike than I think people like. The whole premise when you look at the comic from the surface is these opposite attracts type of situation. I'm like, nope, they're the same human in different wrappers. Honestly, they have so much in common. They have so much in the terms of their personality, of how they behave. And just because Poppy maybe presents herself a little bit differently because of how she has grown up and how her life has shaped her, and also, you know, forced her hands in terms of how she has to be perceived. Same thing for Tora. He's been shaped in a way and he has a certain way that he has to present himself. But under the surface, we've seen those mirrors situations, the one where he punches the mirror and then stops when he kind of notices the hair tie around his wrist. That was mirrored later when Poppy threw a fist and then actually impacted with the bus shelter. So that was funny. Like he didn't pull back. She actually nailed it. So that's, and showing that the mirror and how the art style was done in that case, I think was just a really nice kind of summary of how they are very, very similar people under the surface. They just have lived different lives and they present different ways.
Yeah. And he thinks to himself, I just hope my answer is enough to satisfy that damn hamster wheel brain of hers for now. And we have this beautiful, like, you know, I love all the starry sky images, just gorgeous. And, you know, a little vignette of their the location. And while she's filling up the gas, she asks on an unrelated note, I think I know why you're dressed differently, but why are you talking differently to me too? And she's just looking at him, and Tora looks away. And you can tell that he's uncomfortable. And it's fairly obvious because Tora, you know, has always been looked at as being a thug by outsiders. And that's something that he's sensitive about. So he's clearly trying to stay away from that by not only dressing differently, but also talking differently. So it's a sensitive point for him. And Poppy sees that. She says, is it because, and she stops, she's pointing the nozzle at him. Tora, again, takes a moment to just not respond. And the fact that we see panels of him not responding, like you can see that it's causing him some discomfort. And he kind of avoids answering the question. And he says, please don't point that nozzle at me, Poppy. And she's like, whoops, sorry, no nozzle, pointing a nozzle, got it. Right? He's not answering her question because he's uncomfortable. But the good thing is that it's Poppy he's talking to, because Poppy takes a moment, you know, you see her contemplating, she picks up on his discomfort, looks at him, and looks down and then says, "I'm sorry." And Tora's like, he's taken aback by her statement. And she says, "That was awful of me. I shouldn't have teased you about the way you speak." And she's moving closer to him. And then she touches his arm. Oh, sweet.
And I love that shot that just pulled back, showing them like in the light. And he's right in like the center of the panel. And I just love how she's like looking at him. And this is interesting too, because like color wise, this is a combination of like kind of the two color palettes we've seen so far this season. So like we started the season with a lot of like, it started like with yellows and oranges, shifted into red. And now with this arc, we've had a lot of blues and purples, but it kind of feels like this panel has like almost all of those colors here, which is, I don't know. As an art person, I always notice all the colors.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, it's nice seeing her, validate a little bit about like, mistakes that she made when she was drunk and she was teasing him. That's one thing I noticed this is a consistent thing, at least in the fanfic author world, is we like to torture the poor boy. Like, honestly, we do. We put him through the ringer a lot of the time. He gets, Rex, you made him fall down in our group fic thing. Like and it's kind of fun. And I think it's a trope of like, we like seeing the big hard guy be soft and have faults and fall down and stumble. And we kind of like that. And I think that also is interesting just in character development. I love seeing moments where he is when he's fallible, when he makes mistakes and is clumsy and is human. And that's really nice. But I think that one thing that we as a society really have problems with is when we see large, stoic, strong people, we put huge expectations on them in terms of their feelings and how they might respond to things like being teased. You would think that someone like him in his situation, in the mafia, or even just being a large, confident looking person wouldn't take, being teased and wouldn't let that bother him. And I like that she's recognizing that, it doesn't matter what he looks like or what he does. He's still being teased, and that doesn't necessarily feel good. It was touching on things that he has self-confidence issues around. And even if it isn't tied to something that is rooted in deeper trauma for him, it's still not nice to tease people. And it's, just because you're 5 feet tall, and she's talked about this, she gets away with being an asshole all the time because she's 5 feet tall. Just because he's over 6 feet doesn't mean that he can't be hurt through actually. So she recognizes more strength in herself, that she has the ability to hurt him and needs to be careful with how she treats him as well. So he is, breakable. He is fragile.
I love that. I definitely agree. And one of the things that bothers me a lot is like this, particularly from men, is that we're so callous with our feelings, I think. And I don't like that at all. I think that we should be just as sensitive to men as we are to women. They have feelings too.
Yeah, world would be a lot better place if we all had a little bit more empathy overall for everyone, regardless of what they look like. So, yeah. Yep. So I'm glad she apologized. I'm really glad they got her to put the nozzle down because, knowing Lily, I would not have put it past her to be like, "Oops, I soaked you in gasoline. We're going to go this way in the chapter." But no, come back. Please don't. So yeah, thank you. Put the nozzle down. Let's not go that direction.
And then she says these amazing, incredible words. And she's like, you could just be yourself when you're around me, at least, with your cute little street slang and everything. I mean it. Oh, I love it. Poppy, you're the best. This is what he needs to hear. He needs to know he's accepted as he is. And that's what any partner really needs to know for each other. That they are accepted as they are. That's supposed to be the one person that's your safe place that loves you for as you are. And it's just so affirming and validating, and this is just the best. To me, this is like the centerpiece of the episode.
Yeah, and I love that he's given that message to her more than once now in different ways. I mean, he hasn't like straight up said it that way, but like at Regina's peak when he's like, look at the damn mirror and tell me who and think you're beautiful. Or like, she's even said he gives her emotional affirmation. So even if she's not sure right now how exactly she feels about him, like she's acknowledged that he emotionally validates her feelings. He emotionally validates her as a person. And so I think now, like, she's seeing that she has the power to do that as well for him. And yeah, like you said, like picking up on the fact that like that's maybe a sore spot for him is like, I've kind of gotten this a little bit, not a ton, like probably Tora, because my accent isn't as pronounced, but like, I grew up in the inner city, and so like I'm very well read, but I didn't grow up around people who necessarily spoke certain words out loud. So when I went into a very expensive private college, like I would be giving presentations sometimes and I would pull certain words out because I didn't actually know how to pronounce them out loud. And there can be a lot of judgment of like, I mean, I didn't know how to say facade. I had never heard anybody say that word out loud before. I knew how to use it in a sentence, but I didn't know how to say it. And even like I was dating somebody on the East Coast in college, my Julri, and like he and his friends would actually make fun of how I talked because I have a Midwestern accent. I'm from Minnesota. We pull out some of our vowels more, but like my attitude was kind of like, oh, you don't like how I say couch? Well, I'm going to really lean into that. But like, there's also that feeling of like being looked down upon as not being as smart. And just kind of like, yeah, people making fun of that, of something you can't necessarily control and you don't necessarily think about all the time, but knowing people judge you for it. So I like that Poppy specifically pointed out like, okay, I get why you're talking differently, maybe around Julri and maybe while you're here in Moonbright, but like, it's just me. Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think that's why they're a good pairing, because when you look at them, they are two people that outwardly would foster a lot of automatic assumptions from people. Like she's very, very large, tough. He's in the mafia. People are going to make stacked assumptions about him. But she, on the other side, is very small. She's cute. She's likes unicorns and sparkly things and wears cute clothes. And so people make a lot of assumptions about her immediately. And they've actually managed to somehow find each other, and they recognize that in each other, that they aren't their surface personas. Wearing those surface personas can be very valuable. It can be very useful for both of them. She obviously wields the perception of herself in order to meet certain ends, just as he does. He recognizes that his ability to be threatening and, you know, intimidating can be useful in his line of work. So it can be wielded, it can be useful. But between the two of them, there's that opportunity to bring shields down, because as we were talking about earlier, like they are very similar in that. So where you wouldn't necessarily have that the same way with just any other person who maybe grew up in a way where they are just sort of like everybody else. These two people very much stand out from the crowd in different ways. And so that is kind of how that bond definitely could exist between them.
And I like that she says, "You're cute little slang," street slang.
I like how she just keeps calling him cute. She's like, "I want to bite your tiny ears." Lady. Okay.
And I love that we get this reaction where Tora is like, he kind of has his like sort of surprised, I don't know what to do face. And then the little blush and the tiny nod of like, he realized it, like she caught him. And he like, I love that she caught him, calls him out on it, and then is like, hey, like, it's cute. Like, I like the way you talk. And I just love that he just doesn't know what to do. He's just kind of like, okay.
Right. He's not at that like emotional relationship stage where he can be, you know, accept it really. So he's still uncomfortable because he hasn't been used to having people give him love, give him acceptance. So it takes a while to learn to accept these things. So all he can do is just nod. That's a little bit of acknowledgement that he can do. He can't even verbalize it.
Yeah, this is something I know like Rex and I have talked about. Like I don't do a lot of deep analysis stuff like this. I do it in form of more creative writing, but that's one opinion I've always had about him, is that he is probably very emotionally stunted in terms of like you know, how old he is emotionally because he hasn't had these experiences. So dealing with girls is probably a lot more challenging than, you know, dealing with things in his work. He hasn't had these same type of experiences. So emotionally, he's probably, you know, would be considered much younger than say Poppy was, even though she's went through trauma, she's went through negative relationships, she's had a relationship, she's, you know, had a partnership, so to speak, even if it was a garbage fire. So he is a baby marshmallow wrapped up in a package, in an attractive package. But you know, these types of experiences are new, and he's shy and he's vulnerable, and it's literally like watching a little boy and being like, oh honey, you're gonna be okay, sweetheart, you'll figure this out. But he's got that like bashful teenager kind of vibe going.
No, so sweet. And it looks to me like they're sharing a moment, because like Poppy's looking up at him and blushing, and there's like this time. It looks to me like there's a little bit of a time thing there. And then Poppy's like, anyway, she turns around. Granny hurt her wrist. Thankfully, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm staying on for a couple more days to see some arrangements, and I was about to head home, my Moonbright home, I mean. And it's like, what about you? Are you returning to the city? You can still get a cab service back. It's pretty expensive, but it should be affordable for you. And then she like, she covers her mouth because she's like, crap, way to sound like you're fishing for his financial status. Because yeah, I can see that, because there has been like, it's been clear that Tora has a lot more money than her, you know. She's always budgeting, she can't afford groceries, like she's fishing out her last like dollar, and like Tora's just like giving money away, you know, like he clearly has more of it. But I totally understand her discomfort at that.
That makes it. People who don't have money think about money way more than people that have it, because you have to think about it. You have to think about every dime, and then you are very self-aware. You're very conscious that, you know, other people might be perceiving you in a certain way. So, so that would be obviously something she should go right away, because it's constantly hanging over her head. She can't help but think about it. I just love that he keeps talking about his car. She's like, I am not listening. That bubble is behind your head.
He's like, I rented his car. And then I noticed, I think his car, he named his sports car Red.
He calls it Red. Yeah, I saw that too. I was like, he calls it Red. That's so cute.
I was like,
Red's not happy.
I love that he's like, Red's not, what does it say?
Happy with long distance.
With long distance, which, you know, he drove to Moonbite before with that car. But I love that he's so literal.
Yeah, he
like,
personifies.
What does Tora call his baby? Like, obviously the car that he cares about, Red.
Right. And then he humanizes it, and he's like, gives it a personality. What is it called when you humanize anthropomorphism? Right?
Personification.
So, right, that too.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, his car is not happy. Okay. It's to me, it's like the beginning of like the stereotype of like women zoning out, like men and women zoning out when the other one's talking about their like particular niche thing that they just can't get. And like, he's like, okay, this is the beginning of many conversations where Tora will be talking about his car, probably be like, But
I do love that, like, because like people, it's shown up in fics where it's like that car is his baby, but we've never really had that like confirmed in the comic, and we've seen him driving different vehicles, but like now you're like, yeah, no, that car is definitely your baby.
Yeah, that's cute.
Even though he parks like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be a defense mechanism, because I've always been told never park next to the guy who's like crooked, because you know he's gonna ding your door, so you always give him a wide berth. Just if someone's parked like an asshole, you're like, you know what, you have this space, I'll be over here.
Yeah, but anyway, he crosses his arms and he's like, but I'm not going anywhere. You really think I'll leave you here alone after what just happened? And Poppy's like, you know, which is like, okay, surprised somehow, we're not surprised that Tora cares about her, and he actually cares about her feelings, unlike Mr. Douchebag we just saw. Like, he's actually supportive. She's not used to this.
Well, and like that flashes back to like the previous episode where Julri shows up, or 2 episodes ago, whatever it was, where Julri shows up and he's like, oh, I was gonna join you at the hospital, and she's like, I didn't ask you to, and I don't want you to. But like the fact that Julri like just defaults to like, oh, I was gonna do this thing, even though you know he wasn't going to. But I have family members like that where they'll be like, oh, I thought about doing this thing for you, but they don't.
Right.
And I'm like, in this case, the thought does not count.
Right.
It's like actions do speak louder than words. And the fact that Julri like immediately has like an excuse. Even though like he's expecting that Poppy wanted him there, which I'm still curious how he got that picture then of her grandmother in the hospital bed. Like
Maybe some nurse or something that he knows.
Yeah. But like the fact that Poppy was like, he sent me this picture of my grandma, and it's like, okay, if he wasn't at the hospital, how did he get that?
Yeah, I've kind of turned my brain off a little bit because I'm looking at Granny. I'm like, Granny, you doing some shit. There's some shit going on. This is a ruse. You dove off that chair, didn't you? So like, I'm suspicious that there's some stuff going on, but I'm just sort of like, you know what? Lily will let us know in a second. I'm not going to rack my brain too hard trying to figure something out because there's something going on here that is that's not being revealed yet. So I don't know, but Granny, I don't trust you. You're up to shit.
Yep.
Well, and I think like, you know, Granny, like we see some of her personality and it's like, okay, yeah, I can see where Poppy gets a lot of that. So
Nice.
I am guessing Granny is real sharp too, because it's, I mean, even like the emotional manipulation that she did really pissed me off, because it's like, well, you're saying you don't like Julri, but now you're doing the same thing. But like the fact that her grandmother is that sharp and with it of like, I mean, manipulating people takes some work and some insight. It's not great. But like the fact that obviously there's something going on that she needs to tell Poppy that she hasn't been telling her. And like, it's clearly been keeping stuff from her that I'm guessing Poppy has probably picked up on. Because like Poppy even, it's like her grandma's like gives her this whole like, oh boo-hoo, like all this stuff, and Poppy's like, yeah, like I wasn't gonna say anything, but that's BS. And so I like here where like, you know, she's talking to Tora and kind of like, oh, you can go back to the city or whatever, but that Tora's like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, you think I'm gonna leave you alone? And just like Poppy's face of like the fact that she didn't ask him to stay, but he's going to because he wants to make sure she's okay. Like, even though she got to deal with Julri, Tora got to smack like the teeth out of Julri. But like to him, he's like, no, I still want to be here for you.
Yeah.
Because he actually is a nice guy.
Yeah. The thing with Granny, you know, this is one thing that you think a lot about when you're writing, is like there's kind of three ways the story can go. There's the way you want it to go, the way it should go for the plot, and the way it would maybe go in terms of realism. So I want Granny to be a sassy old sweetheart that loves her granddaughter, is like a secret super free hero behind the scenes and is amazing. Like that's what I want. I love sassy grandma, and I hope that's what she is. I would want her to be a good person. And then there's like for the plot, it's like, okay, maybe it'll be a combination of the two. The other one that I worry is that maybe would be a little bit more of a realistic thing with her is that Poppy, you know, got in a relationship with a man and let him drag her through the dirt. But she got into a relationship, yes, in high school, still very, very young, but, you know, not a child, not an infant by any means. And ending up in those relationships and then letting your partner kind of falling into that sort of cycle of abuse with your partner, I worry that can come from your own childhood, of how your parents and how your role models raised you. So I worry that perhaps Granny throughout Poppy's childhood was a little bit manipulative, was a little bit gaslighty, maybe wasn't the saint Granny that we want her to be. And that could be a little bit why Poppy then fell into a relationship with Julri and ended up in that type of situation. So I hope that's not what it is. I really don't want that to be what it is, but it very well could be.
Well, and you see her emotionally manipulating Poppy to try to get her back to Moonbright instead of saying the truth or why she doesn't want Poppy in the city. And then, I mean, I commented on this on my episode review, is that Poppy calls her grandmother out on that, and like, you know, they're having the conversation, then it gets interrupted, but then like Poppy immediately goes back to, oh, I'm sorry for yelling.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's one of those things that what we want, and this is where Lily is so great, is she is giving us possibly, like, again, it still hasn't come out all the way yet, but I can see the start of a real human relationship, that humans are not infallible. They're not perfect. Even Poppy and Tora, they're not perfect people. Nobody is perfect. And so it wouldn't be, as much as we have, like, the fanfic community has like written Granny so many ways, but usually it's just like super sass Granny, and it's just kind of what we like for her. That might not be the reality, and that's very real. So I will applaud Lily if that is the direction she is going, because I think that you know, takes some balls when you clearly can see the fandom is just like ready for like an older version of Poppy to satisfy that. But I think it's gonna be really interesting. Sorry, we're getting off track. We're getting off track.
What I was gonna say is, like, one thing we've seen with her, the bits that we've gotten about her grandmother is that her grandmother used to smoke a lot, according to Poppy. The little glimpses we've gotten of Granny, like, happily drinking under other people under the table. And the fact that she does swear pretty freely, and has, like, I feel like there's that sass there too, because like it made me so happy that she called Julri a shitbag and a weasel.
I think we're gonna like her. I just don't think that she's going to be the perfect thing that a lot of us early on were just like, yay, Granny. I think that there's going to be like some you know, fault there. And I think that we're starting to see a little hint of how Poppy grew up, which is going to be really interesting to see if it goes forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you all are saying. I don't want to talk so much about Granny, but I really love what you just said. So I'll just leave it at that. And Poppy now asks him, she's a little uncomfortable, looking away, a little sweat mark, and she's like, do you mind sleeping in a moldy guest bedroom? And Tora's like, And she says, because if you'd like, and she looks at him, you can spend the night at my place as long as you don't mind the condition of the house. It's old and kind of shabby, and I'm still saving up for repairs, which is awesome. People, we have been waiting for this moment.
Well, and like the fact that she trusts him to invite him in to like her home. Like he's been to her apartment, but this is like
overnight.
Like overnight in her Moonbright home, which is probably still feels more like home.
I'm so flippin' excited. I really can't wait.
Well, what I love how it's set up too is that he's like, you know, I'm going to stay here and help you, and then the fact that she's like, well, you can stay. Like, she knows he has the money, but like the fact that she's like, well, you can stay with me if you want. And again, she's taking that, like, for her, that's a big step. Because we saw when she was on the train, the fact that she felt comfortable enough to text Tora, hey, I know it's a long drive, but would you like to come to Moonbright and spend time with me? And the fact that she knew he'd say yes. But there's still that fear, and we see that, like, she still feels guilty talking to other men because of, like, the gaslighting she got from Julri. And so, like, here again, I mean, that's a big step for her to invite him into her home.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and Tora just like raises his eyebrows, and he's like, as long as I don't mind, sweetheart, have you been to my place? And Poppy giggles. She's like, don't say that. It's not the coziest, but you've kept it very clean, which is nice. I like to hear that his apartment is clean. It's very important. And she's like, come on, I'll ride my scooter back. You can follow behind in your car. It's a dark, winding country road, but, and he grabs her arm and the wrist, and he's like, seriously, leave your scooter here. I'll drive us. And then he pauses, and she asks, what's wrong, Tora? And you see him looking across some rose bushes. And he's like, will you be okay on your own for a bit? And she's like, I think so. His car's gone, so he's gone too, right? And he's like, don't worry, you won't see his fuckface anytime soon. Which they will we or won't we? We'll discuss in a second. And he's like, go make payment. I'll meet you at my car. I got to go check out something. And he goes across, and he goes to his car. He pulls the license plate, and it goes back, and he's like, number plate still in place. And he's looking around, has this kind of like angry look on his face, keeps looking at his car. Poppy is coming up behind him. And well, first, before she comes up behind him, she goes to the, we'll address the car thing later because it all ties in after. she goes to the lantern and she, you know, looks around first and then thinks to herself about Julri. It looks like he's really gone. She has this like a little worried look on her face, and then she like takes off her helmet and goes to the lantern, and we see some money. She's like, this is all the cash I have left with me. Good thing I didn't have to spend it on lodging after all. And I hope the gas money Tora lent me is enough to pay for Darleen's stone lantern. I didn't want to make him feel bad by asking for it directly. But now we see our darling puppy, like, was not planning on letting this broken stone lantern go unattended because she's a moral person, right? And she, you know, knows that this is going to cost Darleen money to fix. So she wants to make it right. And luckily for her, we see that there already is money tucked in over there in the lantern. She's like, huh? Great minds think alike. And she has a smile. And to me, I think, you know, Emily gave a really nice comment where she talks about how they have the same moral outlook and how that's super important. And I loved it because, you know, if Tora would have been the kind of person who can destroy someone else's property and not feel bad and not try to make amends, that would have been that would not have been a good sign for me. Oh no, and it shouldn't have been for Poppy either. So I think she looks relieved that Tora did that because she's like, okay, he might have had an anger attack, but he tried to make up for it. And he's not just going to go violate people's, you know, like, you know, go make someone lose out on money because of him.
Yeah, I was so glad that she saw that, and because we all know that we've seen instances where he's stolen a car and been like, and now I will pay your bills. But like, so I was really glad that she got to see that, because his reaction when he was redirecting his anger, like, I think she also saw that he very well could have killed her ex-boyfriend right there in that moment, but he pulled back, he redirected his anger, he needed to put it somewhere, and that is a real thing. You can't expect people they have to find outlets for that. They have to. So he found best outlet he could find, and then when he recognized that he damaged something that wasn't belonging to him, he, you know, tried to make up for it. So I was really happy that she got to see that, because we already knew that. So it was a relief that that's not going to be swirling around in her head, like, you know, is he an unhinged lantern smasher and things like that. So that was really refreshing. One thing that I noticed, they say that's been bugging my brain is, she said, I'm so glad now that I don't have to pay for lodging. And so I keep wondering, like, if that's another thing, like maybe she didn't feel safe going back to her home, to her actual home, before Tora got there. But now that he's there, like that, I kind of wonder in that earlier panel when she asked him if he'd come and he basically said yes, and then she looked kind of relieved and excited, if that was also because then she was like, okay, that means I can actually go stay at my house, because she was talking about like having to pay for lodging. So was she considering going to a motel before he showed up, or was that's something else? That's how I was interpreting it.
So I think if I'm remembering the episodes correctly, she was standing in front of a motel thing and she wanted to pay for it because she said her house was too far away and she didn't have a way of getting there. So it's just kind of weird because, maybe there wasn't bus running anymore or something. But I think she was planning on doing that. But now that she has her scooter, she can drive herself back home.
And she also said, like, she didn't want to stop and ask for help from the person that she saw was up, because she's like, oh, then I'll just have a bunch of people at the house tomorrow. So apparently, even though she's like, wherever the house is out a ways, like, apparently if people find out that she's there, she doesn't want a bunch of people showing up at the house either. So like, maybe she feels like having Tora there is kind of like, it'll be like a buffer too.
Also, she didn't have to ask for anyone, you know, Uncle Larry or this person or that person, so nobody will know she's back, you know.
Yeah, she wants to handle it herself. I don't know. I grew up in a small town, and my family's all from a small town. So that whole like, the second you cross the 1 kilometer to this town sign, your uncle like sees your car from the highway and knows you're in town. You're like, here we go. They know I'm here. So I totally feel that, like, trying to stay low and trying to stay under the radar as she comes back into town, because that's. Yeah, that's small town life in a nutshell right there. Everyone knows your business, and it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's just you feel so constricted. You just don't have any freedom to do anything because everybody knows exactly what you're doing. You don't even have the freedom to change your mind on plans because they know you're there. So
yeah, I didn't grow up in a small town, but my dad grew up in a very small town in northern Minnesota. So like, I barely visit there, but people still know who I am. The family genes are very strong. So like, I look a lot like my dad and uncles, but like anytime I'm up there, I will get at least a few people coming up and go, "Are you Jeff's daughter? Are you Dave's daughter?" And I'm like, "Duh, it's Jeff." But like people know, like you're there. People know you're there. They want to know your business. They want to know what's going on. And I'm like, I don't even live here.
People knew that I was getting engaged back in my parents' town before I knew. Like it was that town. It's a gossip hole. It's ridiculous. My aunt apparently knew that my mother was pregnant before my grandmother did. Like that's it. Just and they didn't tell anybody, and it happened because somebody else said, "Does so and so look like? Do you think they're going to be pregnant?" And that started like a gossip train that wasn't even validated, and it swept through the whole town before, and they were pregnant. Random, but like that kind of stuff, it's just the anxiety of all that in a small town. Yeah, I feel Poppy in every way here of what it's like to live there.
Well, and you know that like by the next day, there's gonna be chatter of like, well, Poppy was with this, this nice looking city guy, and she said he was her uncle. Like, who is this?
Yeah, I'm a little excited, and then the part of me that has experienced that is also like, oh God, poor girl. I was like, just take care of that chair that Granny fell off, and get in the car and get back to Naren, because they're all gonna know everything about your life in a few seconds.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, who's this guy staying at their house? Like.
That's the thing is there will literally, I hope that this house is really far out of town, because that would literally happen in our town. Like they turned the lights on, and so my uncle would like know that they were home and tell my other uncle, and they would stop by and they'd report that there was another truck in the driveway, and therefore they knew that I was home, but not by myself. I was there with my boyfriend, and so it was a whole thing. And then they would just show up. Like, so I'm having some PTSD here, guys.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I grew up with a combination of both. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so it's like very, city, but then in a very small insular community, so kind of both. But I didn't experience it to that extent. Snoopy, gossipy, yes, but I could just walk out and disappear. Like.
Oh no! I
couple
mean,
blocks and I'm out of there.
Even the summer camp I went to. I mean, when I was 9, I had some person I had never met before just like be like. And like asked me if I was related to my grandparents, and I was like, yes.
Yep.
And you don't know any of their names, and it's really awkward.
No,
because they're just old people that you don't know.
You like ran naked through my blueberry patch when you were 2, and it's like, hi, I don't know you. Okay.
Anyway, back to the story. Poppy is looking at Tora, and she's like, why is he hunched over the car? And she comes over and she's like, Tora. And we see her, and are you okay? What happened? She has this concerned look on her face, and people were very into her safety shorts. I didn't even notice them, I'll be honest. It was just like, okay. But yeah, the helmet, the safety shorts, she's cute. And Tora's like leaning against his car. He's like, Effer messed with the car. And she's like, what? Is it very serious? And Tora's laughing. And like his back is to her, he's just laughing. And Poppy's like, and she's like, how is this funny? This is funny. So, what do you think, guys? What was up with Julri? Do you think it was Julri? Because I have a theory.
Yeah.
Here's my theory. Do you want to hear my theory?
Go with your theory. Let's hear your theory.
My theory is I thought that we had this focus on the rose bushes when Tora was getting still tinfoil. When Tora was looking out, and he's like, "Oh wait, I have to go, look at something." And then those panels right before had a bunch of rose bushes. I was like, "Wait, does he know about the La Rosa clan?" And like this is. Are rose bushes like their sign? Okay, I know rose bushes are flowers and people plant rose bushes, but and I know it's probably Julri, but that's what I was thinking when he went to
I went to Julri because like the fact that Poppy was worried that he didn't leave after Tora like slapped some teeth out probably tells me a lot about like Julri just has no self-preservation instincts. If he is upset at somebody, it sounds like he will just keep pushing until he gets what he wants. And like the fact that he was expecting to kind of like kind of give this like backhanded comment as he leaves to Tora about like, oh well, this is the kind of girl you like, and then swans off. But the fact that Tora just like hauled off and like slapped him into next week, Julri seems like the type who would do something to get even before he leaves. And I'm sure one, like, who does that to Tora? Unless you have a death wish. But like, you know, Tora doesn't have a reputation out of Moonbright. Like, Tori doesn't know who he is. I mean, I probably wouldn't do anything to the person's car who just backhanded me. And like,
especially when it's your ex-girlfriend and she's going to be able to tell him, they're going to be able to find him. So like that seemed stupid, but we never really thought Julri was exactly that smart. So.
Yeah, I mean, he still doesn't even think that they're broken up.
Yeah.
The fact that he's like, oh, but I love you so much. And like, I had a crush on you for so long. And so like, my guess is like, based on the pranks that I've seen people do to cars, like he either scratched something in the door, he like let out the air in the tires, or like, I don't know, like dumped something on it. My guess is it's something that it's not drivable right now, but it's fixable.
Yeah. I think that's.
I am kind of hoping we're gonna get
Tora on the scooter ride
on the back of the scooter, like hanging on for dear life and like swearing because they're like down these.
I want him to scream like a little girl. That's what I hope for. Like I have had this thing in my head for months that like I love the idea of him being like scared of shit like that. Like I've written that before. I love it. It's one of my favorite theories is that like he doesn't like thrill rides. He doesn't like stuff like that. So I want him clinging to her and just like freaking out on the back of that scooter. I don't care if it's logical. I want it. I just want it so bad.
Well, on the back, he doesn't seem like the type who lets other people drive normally. So like he had to let Poppy drive him home when he was sick, but like they almost got in a car crash anyway.
So he also met her after she crashed her scooter, so she
exactly.
a lot of confidence.
So like I could just see him in general not being the type of person, like I know a lot of guys who cannot stand somebody else driving, like it's a control thing just in general, but like I could see for him like it just feeling like really unsafe to let anybody else drive. So yeah, I just love the thought of him like, I mean, Pop's just like, oh, here, have an extra helmet, safety first.
All right.
This whole scene like blows my mind, and I'm a little like I'm almost tempted to just be like, stop trying to figure out what's going on, because I don't understand what he's doing with the number plate and like what he's looking at. I'm wondering if I was reading some talk online of like, did he steal the car or did he actually rent it? And I hope he really rented it. I really want a behind the scenes of him at Enterprise being like, no, I don't need the additional insurance, and like signing some shit and standing in line for 3 hours and then getting the keys and doing the walk around. Like that's I like that idea better than him jacking a car. But like, did he put some sort of number plate cover over the license plate? Is that what he's picking at when he's at the front of the car? Because then it looks like something came out of the little slot there, but I can't figure out what it is or what's happening. I thought it looked like a little piece of a blade that he like picked loose, but then maybe looking at it again, I think what I'm actually seeing is a reflection of a tire above the N in this panel. So I'm wondering if it's a number plate cover, like one of those things so that like you can't read the plate, and he was checking it to see if the cover was in place, because he just says the number plate is still in place.
Yeah,
so
maybe he was looking for a hidden camera or a GPS tracker.
Something like that. But then I don't know. There's so many things that could be wrong with this car, but I think we just sort of look at it in terms of like what plot progression is going to be is car disabled, now must ride scooter. So it's like, I don't care what's wrong with the car. Something's wrong with the car. The car is not going anywhere though. So now they got to go to the house, and there shall be no escape for at least 2 to 3 days of domestic bliss. So that's what I'm hoping is coming.
Nice.
Well, and with this episode, I know there was some chatter from some people saying that it felt slow or it didn't seem like a lot happened, but I feel like narratively, like as somebody now who writes stories too, like within an individual chapter, you kind of have a natural progression of like emotions kind of ramp up or action ramps up, and then you kind of have kind of coming down from that. And with webcomics, obviously a lot of time you'll end the episode on the highest cliffhanger emotionally wise. But eventually you do resolve that. And so we've had the season start very like we're just there, we're in the action, Poppy's being chased, they're on Aries Street, then she's at work and we have Gil being super creepy, and then her grandmother, and she can't find her grandmother and what's going on, and so she races to Moonbright, and so we've had this like escalating tension, and that Tora and Poppy haven't been together pretty much since the day before, and so it's like ramping up, and like Julri getting smacked to me kind of felt like the climax of this mini arc, and now we're kind of coming down to a quieter moment with just the two of them, which we haven't had since the beginning of the season. So now it's back to just the two of them again, and I feel like now we'll get a couple quieter episodes before things go nuts again.
It's the first time that they're going to get some private time alone together, where one of them does not need to go to the airport, and they're also, one of them is not sick and like passing out, where there's not a literal party happening around them, where they're not drunk. So it's going to be
Poppy cannot run away.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So I think it's going to be a really satisfying moment. That doesn't make me think that Lily isn't going to have the cousins show up just at a super inopportune moment, because we all love doing shit like that. Nice. So I think she's got to dole it out in batches. Like I think we're going to get some satisfaction because that's you can see that coming, but she's also gotta mess with us a little bit. Like we all do it. It's fun. Like you can't tell me when you're writing shit Fricks that you're not sitting there being like hee like I turn into a straight up goblin sometimes. I'm like, they're gonna hate this, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Well, like my most recent revised chapter, I ended on a cliffhanger and I'm like, wow, I've been so nice. I haven't done one of these for a while. Go me. And it's just like, and then people are like, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how fun this is.
Yeah, I'm always in the comments giving people shit and be like, that was illegal, why did you do that? And then I go over to my own stuff and be like, and now I shall do it to you. It's just one big torture chamber over on AO3. Yep. But I think that I like how this chapter, like I like that it wrapped up with him laughing. Like I like that. I always like to see him laughing. I like to see like whether this is a situation of like he's just cannot believe that this is happening or he's frustrated, but I like that it's coming out in terms of laughter, because I think a lot of people in his situation with high emotional stakes right now. He's stressed out. He just tracked her down, but he's been looking for her. He's worried about her. He's scared, and this asshole ex is obviously stressing him out as well. And now this guy is potentially come and dicked with his car, or his car is damaged in some other way. Like a lot of people would throw another lantern. So I'm happy that he's laughing now. That at least he's found some peace, or at least enough to be able to just laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation, or the fact that he knows he has to climb onto a small scooter and wear an embarrassing helmet. I hope.
Yeah, I do like that we got some really nice like quiet moments with just the two of them in this episode, where there was no interruptions besides him. He went to go deal with his car and then leave money for the broken lantern, but like we didn't have like random people. Like it's late, obviously, but like nobody like walked up to distract the conversation. So we really did get a chance to kind of see them both like emotionally processing, like reacting to each other, and you notice there was no like, usually they'll kind of tease or banter, or like Tora will crack jokes, or like try to make a pass at her, and like there was none of that in this, because I think for both of them, like they were relieved to see each other, and I think like just the events of the past few days have been so intense that they need, like, I think they both realize like the teasing isn't really going to help in this. Like now is not the time for like pervy comments.
Yeah, put them away for just a sec. No, it's nice. You're right. It's nice to see that moment of peace. And I mean, they had their kind of flirty banter as they walked over towards the gas station, but it is nice to see them, be serious together a little bit and just have those real human moments where they have all of their, because that banter and that sarcasm, that is definitively, I know when I'm uncomfortable, it's in one of my company disc profiles at work. It literally says makes jokes when uncomfortable. So it is definitely a defense mechanism. So seeing that come down a little bit is really nice.
Right. Well, ladies, this was super, super nice. I'm gonna have to go. My poor kids are not sleeping because I'm in their room. But thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure, Begonia. It's been a pleasure to have you again. And CopyPastel, CP, it's been awesome to meet you and have you on. It's super nice. And I'm so excited you came, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Having us.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.